Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rabil Alamsyah. My student ID number 20018088. I'm glad to be here today to talk to you about an analysis of communications types of deaf students with environment, written by Cipta Rizky Rahma and Abdul Khalid. Let's see the first. In this article, we have introductions, research method, finding and discussions, also the conclusions. First of all, let's see the introductions. As I mentioned here, communications. Communication is the process of sending and receiving messages or information between two or more people, so that it can be understood easily. Communication is a systemic process in which people interact with and through symbol to create and interpret meaning. Now, communication is divided into two types. The first one is verbal communications, and the second one non-verbal communications. Verbal communication is a conversation activity by one person to another, either orally or in writing, such as speaking, listening, writing, and reading. Non-verbal communication is a process of delivering message to other by not using word. All the movement of the human body have a meaning and no incidental movement, such as the use of gesture, body language, facial expressions, the eye contact symbol, and the speech ways, such as intonation, emphasis, emotion, and speaking style. Nonverbal communications dimensions. According to Julia, kinesics is body positions and body motions, including those of the face. There are several types of kinesics. The first thing is facial expressions. Second one, the eye contact. And the last one, body posture and gesture. And now, haptic. Haptic is physical touch. Haptic is nonverbal communication. Touches can be include shaking hand, holding hand, touching back, stroking, punching, and the others. Each of these forms of communications conveys a message about the purpose of feeling of the toucher. And the third one, para language. It's a vocal communication that doesn't involve words. It includes sounds such as murmurs or gasps, and vocal qualities such as volume, rhythm, pitch, and inflections. Examples are a tone of speech, tones of voice, loud or weak voice, speaking speed, sounds quality, intonation, and the others. And however, it's not always in normal condition. We call it disability. Now we pay attention to a deaf people, a person who doesn't have the ability to hear as a normal people in general. According to Suman 3, 2006, deaf is a condition of losing hearing and that leads to someone cannot catch the stimulations, especially through the hearing. Deaf children can be said to be the children who have limitation in receiving language but use nonverbal communications. Special education is needed to handle deaf students, such education that can be obtained at extraordinary school or in Indonesian called sekolah luar biasa. In order to seek the communication type of the students with environments, the current this research was designed to investigate how deaf students communicate with the deaf students, how the deaf students communicate with others disability, and how the deaf students communicate with normal people. The research method here use the qualitative descriptive as the participants, 3 deaf students at SMALB Banjar Mendalan, Lamongan, academic year 2016 and 2017. Rifki as a low level, students 1, Firda medium level as a student 2, and Tio high level as a student 3. The data collection technique in these studies is interview, observations, and documentations. And research instrument in this study are a notebook to write about the interview in progress. It also can be used tape recorder to record what was discussed with the informant, checklist paper, and a file note. Analyzing technique in this study are organizing, coding, and reducing, interpreting, and the last one, representing. Let's have a look about the finding and the discussions. The first one, let's have a look about the deaf students and deaf students communications. As we can see, the verbal communications using the oral. Deaf student and deaf students communications use oral and sign language in, as we can see, in students 1 environment, oral is clear and can be understood almost in everyone, while in medium level environments, oral is slow, vague, and incomprehensible. When communicating with hearing impaired people, all words are very vague and no sound at all. In student 3 environment, body language and facial expression are used, while when communicating with fellow deaf outside their school environment, and text doesn't fit the rules. Now, let's have a look about the non-verbal communications between deaf student and deaf student communications. The first one is kinesthetic, using facial expression, eye contact, and body posture and gesture. The facial expression are used to convey the message to other. Students 1 said, aku tidak tahu, and student 2 said, tidak, aku tidak mau. Their expressions change. Now the eye contact. In deaf hearing process communication, eye contact is necessary to add information, but student 1 never lost eye focus. Students 3 is difficult to focus on others. Now the body gesture and posture and gesture. Sign language is used by deaf people to communicate using manual communications, body language, and lip movement to express themselves. The haptic. Touch can be used to restore focus and caused by a positive or negative feeling to the recipients. Students 2 often lost focus when invited to communicate, while students 1 more focus on his partner. Paralanguage communications of deaf students occur simultaneously with oral communications, giving cues such as volume, interest, and low voice. Proxemics. Deaf students must be at a close distance to communicate effectively, such as mouth gestures or body gesture, or to facilitate the understanding. Now, how about the deaf students communicate with other disability? The deaf students communicate with emphasis on hearing and lip and gesture movement, while the Down syndrome students doesn't use sign language or gesture. Miscommunication occur when students with hearing impairment and Down syndrome students communicate, such as when the deaf students must repeat a phrase and the Down syndrome students take a long time to understand what is said. Now, let's take how the nonverbal communications between them. The kinesthetic. The facial expression. Down syndrome students show different expression when rejecting something, feeling happy or upset. When students 1 tells them to call Bulninil, they repeat and show confusions. Eye contact. Eye contact is essential for deaf-hearing communication to ensure accurate information is delivered. Students 1 and students 2 always maintain eye focus when communicating with Down syndrome students. So the body posture and gesture. Body posture and gesture dominate the transfer of their deaf children information, such as shaking hand, stretching their heads, pointing finger, holding hand, lifting both hand or clapping. The last thing is paralinguistics. Deaf students have oral communication that is unclear and difficult to understand, while Down syndrome students have oral communication that is clear and easy to understand. So how about the deaf students and normal people? As we can see, the verbal communication using oral and writing. In the oral verbal communications, students 1 communicates with the teacher using clear, broken, and slow oral, while students 2 use obscure and slow language, while students 3 is silent and plays mobile phones. In writing, deaf students use a combination of oral and sign language to communicate with teacher and researchers. Writing, body gesture, and oral are used when communicating with students 1 and students 2. How about the non-verbal communications between deaf student and normal people? Facial expressions are used by deaf people, teacher, and the researchers to convey the message, such as rejecting something, feeling happy, or feeling upset. And the eye contact. Student 1 never lose eye focus when communicating with the researcher or teacher, while student 2 is more focused on the phone. Student 3 is difficult to focus on others due to bowing. Eye contact is essential for deaf hearing process communications. The body posture and gesture. The body posture and gesture dominate the transfer of their deaf children's informations. Haptic. Touch can be used to restore focus on an opponent, but students too often lose focus when communicating with a teacher or researchers, while students want more focus on their partner to communicate. And the last one is prosemics. The deaf students should take positions at a close range to facilitate understanding of communications transfers, such as oral gesture or body movement. So we can conclude that the result of this study are the deaf students' communication with deaf children is more dominant using nonverbal rather than verbal. And then the deaf students communicate with the other disability, as we say, the Down syndrome, is deaf children's communication with dominant Down syndrome children using non-verbal communication types. The use of intense verbal communication such as kinesthetic and haptic are two very important aspects of their communications. The last thing is deaf children's communication with normal people use a combination of verbal communications such as oral and writing, and non-verbal communications, kinetic, haptic, and prosemics. In this research, teacher will use a clear combination of sign language and oral, while researchers use oral, written, and sign language to make it easier for deaf students to understand their conversations. That's all from me. I'm sorry if I got a lot of mistakes. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.